In 2008, Richard Fuld lost $1 billion of his own money. Not by being reckless, not by being stupid, but by making the exact same mistake he'd watched others make just 7 years earlier. And here's what keeps financial psychologists awake at night. He's not alone. We all do this. We watch someone lose everything to debt, swear we'll never do the same, then max out our credit cards anyway. We see market bubbles burst, promise we'll be smarter, then ride the next one all the way down. It's not stupidity, it's something far more disturbing about how our brains process financial pain. There's a phenomenon in psychology called the peak end rule. Your brain doesn't remember experiences accurately. It remembers the most intense moment and the final moment, then averages them. Everything else? Gone. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize partly for documenting this. In one famous experiment, people had to endure uncomfortable medical procedures. Group A had a shorter, intensely painful experience. Group B had the same pain, but doctors extended the procedure with a less painful ending. When asked to rate their experience afterward, Group B remembered it as less awful, even though they suffered longer. Their brains weighted the calmer ending more than the total pain. Now here's where it gets terrifying for your wallet. Financial pain works the same way. Imagine you panic sold stocks during a market crash in March. You watched your portfolio drop 30%. You couldn't sleep. You sold everything at the bottom. Then by December, markets recovered. You felt relief. Maybe you even made some money back in safer investments. Your brain now has 2 data points: the peak panic and the acceptable ending. The months of anxiety in between? The lessons about holding through volatility? Your memory compresses them into irrelevance. And when the next crash comes, you'll panic sell again, wondering why you never learn. This isn't a character flaw. It's called affective forecasting error. We're terrible at remembering how financial stress actually felt. We remember that it was bad, but not the visceral, sleep-destroying, relationship-damaging reality of it. So we underestimate how we'll react next time. We become horror movie characters who keep going back into the basement. Every single time. September 15, 2008. Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. 158 years of history. Gone. 15. The firm held over $600 billion in assets. Within hours, global markets seized up. The bankruptcy remains the largest in U.S. history. But here's the part that reveals our psychological curse. This wasn't new. In 1998, exactly 10 years earlier, long-term capital management nearly destroyed the financial system with the exact same playbook. Massive leverage. Derivatives bets. Assumptions that recent market calm would continue forever. The Federal Reserve had to orchestrate a $3.6 billion bailout. Richard Fuld, CEO of Lehman Brothers, watched LTCM's collapse. Everyone on Wall Street did. The lesson was crystal clear. Extreme leverage plus complex derivatives plus complacency equals catastrophe. So what did Lehman do? They increased their leverage ratio to 31-1 by 2007. For every dollar they actually had, they borrowed 31. They doubled down on mortgage-backed securities, the very instruments that were starting to show cracks. Fuld himself lost over $1 billion in Lehman stock. This wasn't someone else's money. This was his personal wealth, accumulated over 3 decades. And he wasn't a fool. He had an MBA from New York University. He'd survived multiple market cycles. He'd literally watched the exact same movie 10 years earlier. So why did he do it? Because of a bias psychologists call the recency effect, combined with normalcy bias. Between 1998 and 2007, markets mostly went up. Housing prices rose every year. Each quarter of profits felt like the new normal. The pain of 1998 faded into abstract history. As Morgan Housel explains in The Psychology of Money, we're shaped more by our recent experiences than by history we've only read about. Fuld's recent experience was 9 years of growth. The LTCM disaster became a story, not a felt memory. By 2007, Lehman's own risk models assumed housing prices couldn't fall nationwide because they never had in their dataset. They were driving forward using only the rearview mirror of the last few years. The firm that had survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and the 1998 crisis collapsed because human memory is designed to forget pain once it stops hurting. In 2006, researchers at Harvard and the University of Chicago ran a study on investor behavior. They tracked people who lived through the Great Depression versus younger investors. People who experienced the 1929 crash in their formative years held dramatically less stock decades later, even when it cost them returns. Their pain memory stuck. But here's the twist. Their children and grandchildren didn't inherit this caution. Despite hearing the stories, the next generation invested just as aggressively as people with no family history of financial trauma. Stories don't create memories. Experience does. And even experience fades faster than we think. Psychologists call this the availability heuristic. We judge the likelihood of events based on how easily we can recall examples. The problem? We can't recall pain accurately after it fades. We remember the fact of pain, but not the feeling. Another study, published in the Journal of Behavioral Finance, asked investors to rate their stress levels during the 2008 crash. Then again in 2012. When asked to remember how stressed they were in 2008, people underestimated it by an average of 40%. They knew they'd been stressed, but they couldn't recreate the actual feeling. So when 2020's COVID crash hit, many made the same panic decisions, shocked by their own reactions. I thought I'd learned, dozens told researchers. Dan Ariely explores this in Predictably Irrational. We're not randomly irrational, we're predictably, systematically irrational in the same ways, over and over. Our memory doesn't update its threat database properly. It's like having an antivirus that forgets what viruses look like after a few years. There's also a phenomenon called the fading affect bias. Negative emotions fade faster than positive ones, evolutionarily helpful for not living in constant fear, but disastrous for financial learning. You remember that you lost money in a bad investment, but 6 months later, the sick feeling that came with it has evaporated. So when a similar opportunity appears, you remember your regret about missing the recovery more vividly than the loss itself. You're not weak. Your brain is literally designed to forget pain faster than pleasure, which means you're biologically wired to repeat financial mistakes. Now here's where it gets darker. Some people understand this memory flaw and profit from it deliberately. Payday lenders operate on a 14-day loan cycle for a psychological reason. Research shows that financial pain fades significantly after just 2 weeks. A customer takes a loan, feels the stress of the fee, swears they won't do it again. But 2 weeks later, that emotional memory has weakened. The immediate need for cash feels more pressing than the faded memory of previous regret. The average payday loan customer takes out 9 loans per year. The payday lending industry generates $9 billion annually in fees, largely from repeat customers who intellectually know the loans are expensive, but emotionally forget the pain fast enough to borrow again. They're not targeting stupid people, they're targeting human memory architecture. Casinos use the same principles. They know that the pain of losing $200 fades within days, but the thrill of almost winning creates a lasting emotional memory. So they design reward schedules to maximize memorable near misses and minimize the emotional weight of losses. You walk away remembering excitement, not pain. But some people have cracked the code on their own psychology. Warren Buffett keeps a file he calls the mistakes file. Not a spreadsheet, but a written narrative of how he felt during bad decisions. The emotion, not just the facts, because he knows that in 5 years, he'll remember he lost money on a certain stock. But he won't remember the overconfidence or fear that drove the decision. By writing the feeling down, he creates an external memory his brain can't fade. Institutional investors do something similar. They conduct post-mortem analyses, not just of what happened, but of their emotional state during decisions. Some record video journals during major trades, capturing their reasoning and confidence levels in real time. When they review these later, they're often shocked by how different their past certainty feels from their current memory of uncertainty. This is the horror movie moment, where you realize the monster isn't external. It's your own memory, constantly rewriting your past to make you vulnerable to the same mistakes. Unless you deliberately architect external memory systems, you're fighting a losing battle against your own neurology. So how do you break the cycle? You can't fix your memory, but you can work around it. First, create emotional records, not just financial ones. When you make a major money decision, write down not just what you did, but how you felt, your confidence level, your fears, the story you're telling yourself about why this time is different. Use voice memos, video journals, anything that captures the emotional texture, because that's what your memory will erase first. Second, build pre-commitment devices. Ulysses tied himself to the mast because he knew he'd forget the danger of the sirens once he heard them. Set up automatic transfers before you're tempted. Create investment rules during calm markets that you're not allowed to break during panicked ones. Make it structurally difficult to repeat mistakes when your emotional memory inevitably fades. Third, study strangers' disasters, not just your own. Your brain forgets your pain, but it never formed emotional memories of other people's pain in the first place. So those stories stay factual. Clinical. In the first. When you read about Lehman Brothers' collapse, you're not fighting fading affect bias because you never had the affect to begin with. Use other people's horror stories as your external memory. Fourth, measure feelings, not just outcomes. Keep a simple stress log during volatile markets. Rate your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10 each day. When things calm down and your brain tries to tell you it wasn't that bad, you'll have data proving it was. Numbers your memory can't rewrite. Fifth, understand that this never stops. This isn't something you fix once. Your memory will keep fading pain. This cycle will keep trying to repeat. The goal isn't to remember perfectly. It's to build systems that remember for you. Remember Richard Fuld losing $1 billion by repeating a mistake he'd watched destroy others? The tragedy isn't that he was greedy or stupid. The tragedy is that he was human. His memory worked exactly as human memory is designed to work, filing away old pain to make room for new experiences. The difference between people who break the cycle and people who don't isn't intelligence or willpower. It's whether they build external systems to compensate for internal design flaws. Your brain will forget. Plan accordingly. If this changed how you think about your own financial decisions, subscribe for more psychological breakdowns of money mistakes. Next video explores why people who know about cognitive biases still fall for them, including me.